Good morning. My name is Jim Daniels. I'm be the moderator today. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors for hosting this event. Almost lost one of them. First of all, the Isaac Walton League of America, the Sustainable Communities Coalition, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, the League of Women Voters, the United Neighborhoods of Evansville Teachers Association, Teamsters Local 215, Valley Watch, and the plumbers and pipe fitters. And especially thanks to the library, the host of this event for today and all of these events. It's an excellent place to have these programs, and the library has just bent over backwards to provide not only a good room, but a lot of other resources to make this happen. So I'd like to give me that. I can't trust you people for a minute. Just because the session is over doesn't mean I'm done with you. I'd like to give a special thanks to Darren Willett. Darren, wave to people. Darren is doing the sound and providing a lot of the setup for the room, and it's a pretty good little chore to get all of this stuff ready for this particular event, so we appreciate that very much. And again, we'd like to let you know that we do have some refreshments. We've got some coffee and some donuts, and welcome to those, and we'd like it, if you could, to make a donation to help cover the cost of those. And even if you don't drink coffee or eat donuts, you can still make a donation. So it doesn't really preclude you from doing that. So we appreciate that. And if you'd like to have an email notice of these particular events, all you need to do is sign up in the back of the room. And she's waving her hand back there. Susan Harp is back there watching the laptop. You just put your email address right in there, and we will only use that to send you a heads up when these events occur. So that's one way of doing that. The format for today is that we're going to really start with legislators, get a couple minutes or so to say what did or didn't happen during this last session. And then we're going to give you a chance to ask some questions. Now, since the session is over, you'll be able to ask, we'll kind of broaden the scope of what the questions might be able to be. So that's like a surprise to the legislators, but that doesn't mean they're actually going to be able to answer those questions, And of course, one of my first questions is, why is there air? So you can. That's a tough one to answer. But at any rate, you'll have a chance to be able to ask some questions and make a couple comments. You'll have a couple minutes to do that, and then the legislators will have each of them will have a chance, if they desire, to respond to that. And then we're just going to keep going back and forth for a while until we try to get a lot of this addressed. We're hoping that we have a little extra time, and I believe that we will, to have a couple of other discussions about some other things that have been happening. And one of those is consolidation and how that may affect folks and the relationships between local, state, and federal government. And we'll have a little discussion about that. And to help lead that discussion is a representative from the League of Women Voters on my far left. It's Roberta Hyman. Roberta, wave. That's Roberta. She's going to lead that discussion, and then we're hoping to have a little back and forth about people with some questions about what that is, what it means, and a number of kind of things, and it'd be like a free-for-all. So, and Roberta's really looking forward to that. You can tell by looking. But at any rate, hopefully we'll have some time for that. We do have security. Security's in the very back. Wave your hand. Right now he doesn't have a gun in his hand, but he's got that in his pocket. He's only authorized at the present to shoot up to 3 people. If he shoots any more than 3 people, we have to pay him extra. So you just have to kind of be careful about that. But at any rate, I'd like to welcome you today. And actually the first thing I'm going to wind up doing is, he's getting ready to leave. We do have, obviously each year there's some changes. I do want to make note of a couple of things. We do have a couple of folks that are actually leaving the legislature, actually on purpose. And we do have one of those folks is here, but the other one is not. But Trent Van Haften has decided that he wants to see about moving to a bigger house. So he did send a note, and I thought I'd take a minute to read that one first. And this is from Trent Van Haften, State Representative from House District 76. I haven't read this before, so we'll try to stumble through it. And it says, first, I want to apologize for not being able to attend this morning. My scheduling demands since the end of the session have been changed dramatically as a result of taking on a congressional campaign. I made another commitment prior to the scheduling of this last meeting. Since I will not be a member of any future Meet Your Legislator panels for state legislators, I want to extend my gratitude for being able to participate in these events over the past 7 years. These meetings have always been a highlight of each legislative session. The opportunity to address the questions and concerns from so many people on so many issues always challenged me personally and in my role as a public servant. There is nothing I enjoy more than an open and civil discussion about our government. Oh my goodness, I want to thank Jim Daniels for his service as a moderator. That's actually in here. I didn't make that up. I can think of no other job that I would want less. And think of, okay, that's enough of that paragraph. I also want to thank all of the sponsors for making sure all of us have an opportunity to be heard. I want to thank my fellow legislators. In my 7 years, I have learned from each of them and am proud to have been part of the Evansville delegation. Lastly, and most of all, I want to thank all of you for allowing me to serve as state representative. That's from Trent Van Haften. So we appreciate his service. And I will note that we do have a couple of other legislators that are not also have previous commitments. Senator Vanita Becker is not able to be here today, nor is Suzanne Crouch because of previous out-of-town commitments. So we appreciate their participation in this last Meet Your Legislator session and in the General Assembly. And we'll see what happens as far as the next time goes. But now we have another person that is retiring from the state legislator, and he is here today. And that's the person to my immediate right, Dennis Avery, who has served in the legislature for a number of years in a very honorable capacity, representing not only his own individual district, but the entire southwest part of Indiana and the entire state of Indiana. And so it's been my pleasure to have worked with Dennis on a couple of specific issues, and just on the concept of good government. He's a perfect example of what good government's all about. A person that really cares about his constituents, cares about the state of Indiana, cares about what ought to happen. So we very much appreciate his service. And I'm kind of hoping that he still shows up and speaks from the other side of this, because I'm going to miss being able to cut him off. I may give you some extra leniency today, but don't count on it. But anyway, it's been my pleasure to have worked with him, and that's kind of what we're all about, trying to make something happen. Whether you agree with some stuff or not, the idea of service in a pretty thankless job is very much appreciated. Dennis, you can say something if you would like to.
I would. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your really kind words, Jim. But we're not going to allow anyone to vote on the accuracy of those comments. But I might lose. So, but I do thank you for those kind words. And I've been coming to these Meet Your Legislator programs for, I think we've had them the entire 36 years that I've been a member of the House of Representatives. And as weird as it sounds, I've really enjoyed them. And I've come to Meet Your Legislator programs when the room was full of leather jackets, and they were upset with me because of a motorcycle helmet bill that I had, and I came to one time where I had to walk a gauntlet of people saying, there he is, that's the one I voted no. And that was on another issue. And And the place is just absolutely packed. And you look around this room and you see about over 40 people, and you think, oh, that's not many people. It should be more. But there have been times where we'd have Meet Your Legislator programs and only half a dozen people would show up. We've been at the Civic Center, the C.K. Newsom Center, the YWCA. We've been scattered out around the town, and so. But this is the best facilities we've ever had, and I especially like the donuts, and I always partake in donuts, and I appreciate that. But this last year, I want to say a little bit about this last year. It was I think a very productive session. Although I voted against most of the bills that were produced because I thought they were either poorly drafted or we couldn't afford them, but nevertheless they passed. And so many of the legislators who voted for them think it was a great session. I think it was a really bad session myself. Productive, but bad productivity. And there are things that will have to be fixed next year. And because of the fact that we do not have the money to do the things we did, and it's going to create havoc, I think, throughout the state of Indiana for local government. But so we'll have to work on some of the issues that we passed last year, and I'm confident my colleagues will do that. But it was a bad year to do it right this year. It was going into election year, and I don't think people were as responsible as they should be. Next year, as I said, will be tough. And the biggest issue, I think, will be how do you fund government services? And we are cutting services every day. Services are being cut, and there are programs that will be closing, and we'll continue to borrow money. We're right now by the end of this biennium, $4.6 billion. That's $4,600 million bills to the federal government for the unemployment insurance deficit. We're borrowing money every day to pay unemployment insurance benefits, and we only made matters worse this last session, and will continue to get worse. And there are unfunded liability in our pension systems, over $11 billion in just the teacher's retirement fund, and then you have the other funds that are a lot better off, but nevertheless there is a deficit in those too. So we have a lot of problems we have to deal with. At the end of this biennium, for example, we're going to have $142 million in deficit in our general fund. It's the fund that we're supposed to pay our bills with, and we'll be $142 million in the red in that particular fund. So there's going to be a need of absolutely dramatic cuts in services, or there's going to be a need to raise additional revenue. And I've served with a lot of governors over the years. Most of the governors tackled those issues and in fact, Bob Orr, which is I think one of the better governors that we had in Indiana that I've served with. I had a lot of respect for Bob Orr. He raised taxes when we needed to, and he didn't. He showed the courage to do that by bringing the people of the state of Indiana on board for his policies through the A+ program and other needed programs. And he was the other political party, but I supported him in those efforts. And that's one of the problems I see with government right now. There's a lack of willingness to make tough decisions, and also a lack of willingness to support members of the other party. There's a lack of collegiality, and there's, I think, a greater need for that. And there's a lack of respect and courtesy, I think, in government anymore. We attack one another. Our constituents attack us, and sometimes for good reason. But nevertheless, I think we ought to get back to the time when we work together for the common good, when we talk to our constituents and our constituents talk to us, and I think we had a lot more productivity then, and that it's going to return. It's just we're going through a difficult time now. But I'm going to shut up. I'm glad you had this opportunity to be at a Meet Your Legislators, my one last time, and I appreciate your ovation a while ago, and I look forward. I've enjoyed the 36 years, and I look forward to coming here as a member of the public and picking on my state senator a lot and my state reps, but I look forward to being a member of the audience lobbying this I think good group of people.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go into a little session with allowing each of the legislators to say what's been happening lately in Annapolis. And we'll start on the Senate side with Senator Dyke.
Senator Hyman?
No, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming today also. And again, I want to thank Dennis for all his work in the legislature. And you think about it, 36 years, and he had 18 elections. He was 18-0. So I made a little certificate for him that said 18-0 on there. And I hope you frame that, put it above your bed or something, Dennis. But thank you for all your work. You know, Dennis has been an advocate for children in the state of Indiana, people who don't have a lot, people who don't have a voice. So, Dennis, thanks for all your service for the children of the state of Indiana. So thank you for that. This session, I believe, was political. In my opinion, there were so many things that you try to get passed, and for political reasons, you don't get hearings on bills, you can't get amendments put in, things like that. One of the bills, and I'll talk about a bill that failed this year that I was disappointed in. I'm sure Mr. Blair has comments about it, but it was a net metering bill. And here at the Evansville Public Libraries, they're actually putting solar panels on the roof to generate their own electricity. And this net metering bill would allow customers to put power back in the grid and get credits. And for the second year, this thing has failed because they can't come to a consensus on, at least we got to get our foot in the door and moving in the right direction. And like Dennis said earlier, it was all political. You know, one side wanted this, one side wanted that, and it was so stubborn and hard-headed that we couldn't get anything out of this. And I wish we would have got somewhere with this so people could start putting wind and solar energy in their homes and start getting credits for power they put back into the grid. Vectren actually is in support of this, and other power companies may not be. And it was just it was going to give the final bill was going to give power to the IURC to come up with rules. I didn't necessarily agree with that because power companies had different ideas of what the IURC wanted. And like I said, some power companies were for it, some were against it, but I was disappointed this did pass. The unemployment issue that Dennis was talking about, we're about $1.7 billion in a hole right now, and as Dennis said, by the next year, it'll be about $4.5 billion in a hole that we borrow from the federal government. This bill does allow a delay of 1 year for unemployment taxes for employers. I've got a lot of calls. I did vote in favor of this. I got a lot of calls from small businesses saying, you know, Bob, we need help. I want to hire a person, but I can't do it if I have to pay the higher unemployment taxes. So I did vote in favor of that. A couple of things that did do, it made some job creation language in this also. But also what it did was a bill that I had originally was called a clawback provision. And a clawback provision is when local county councils, city councils work with a company. For example, Meade Johnson, they worked with the Meade Johnson Company on tax abatements this past year. And what was good about what they did here in the city of Evansville is they had a resolution ahead of time with Meade Johnson's, and Meade Johnson said, okay, we're going to supply this many jobs, and if we don't, we'll pay that money back to you. The money that we got in tax abatements, we'll pay it back to you. So many companies don't do that. The way it's done now, most time in county to county, is if they don't live up to their expectation, you just cancel that tax abatement for another 2 years until they can get their employment levels back up. But what I was trying to do is get discussion with companies ahead of time, with local boards, and say, okay, if I don't supply this many jobs, I'll pay that money back to you. Then that money can be used either to return to taxpayers or help with the economic development area again. The city of Indianapolis just did that, and they got back about $4.5 to $5 million from different companies that failed to live up to employment expectations. They paid the money back to the local cities, and it helps them out quite a bit. One of the other things that we did, and I'm sure a lot of you are interested in, is school funding. Of course, in 2009, we switched the general fund money for school operating funds to sales tax money, took it away from the property tax rolls. So now we got a 1% increase in sales tax, and this money is being used to pay salaries for teachers. It's being used to pay health benefits, insurance, utility cost, and the revenue has been cut dramatically from the state. We lost a lot of money. And you see what I think Governor Daniels and the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Bennett, have said, okay, we're going to cut money for education. You see it all around the state right now as a result from what happened from taking away from the property tax roll. It was a very steady income or revenue, and now sales tax, which has dropped dramatically. And so you see school districts, wealthy, poor school districts, all of them cutting. They're closing schools. Down in Mount Vernon and Posey County, they're closing one school. Possibility of having another school close. They're going to have a referendum on tax increase for 7 years to try to keep the operating budget up for those schools. It's a bad situation. I don't know what the answer is. They're going to find other ways. I think we talked about it earlier about foundations, people establishing foundations, some other tax increase or fees increase to help these schools out. But we did pass this year to be able to take money from their capital projects funds up to 5% and switched over to the general fund amount to help keep teachers in schools and keep class sizes smaller. Also, they can also take 10% out, but they have to freeze the wages of teachers and staff right now. So they can take up 10% out if they do freeze the teachers' pay and use that money. I think Mount Vernon School District is about $800,000. I can't remember what Vandenberg County Schools was. I'm sure it's probably $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million they can put back in to help pay the teacher salaries and keep the size of the class smaller. Those are the big issues that I have. Real quick, I just want to touch base on one other. Do I have 30 seconds? You haven't held that up yet. Very quickly, there was a bill that I had, and people ask all the time, where do you come up with ideas for bills? Well, it's from people like you who contact me and say, Bob, can't we have legislation to help this or do this? There was a young lady from Owensville, Indiana, and a mother of a lady that died. And what happened in this case was this young lady died. She was separated from her husband. She had a protective order against her husband. When she died, her husband had full rights to the body, made all the funeral arrangements. And during those funeral arrangements, it was he made a travesty of her life, dressed her up very strangely at her funeral, didn't allow the parents or sisters or brothers of the young lady who died have any input on the funeral arrangements at all. So what I've done in this original legislation is said if you have a protective order against you, you cannot make funeral arrangements for this deceased person. So I never got a hearing for that, but I was able to get that into another bill. It was a House Bill 1234. So I think it's a good piece of legislation. But if you have ideas and thoughts about legislation, things like that actually happens to people, and we might not think about it, but you all do. Please come to us, and I think all of us are receptive to talking to you and trying to get legislation passed. But that was just some of the things I worked with. But thank you again for coming. I'll cut it off.
Thank you.
You don't have to applaud. I'm not leaving.
Amazing what happens when you don't turn on the stopwatch. The next is Representative Gail Reekin.
Thank you, Jim. And let me say just briefly about this good man here. What I didn't turn on. Sorry.
You're going to talk about me
Is
on
that
this
on?
microphone.
Okay, now we want the microphone on. When I first decided that I wanted to run for this office, the first person I went to was Dennis Avery. I don't think anyone has been more well prepared for doing the job of representing the people in Indianapolis, and he does it, and I should say, did it? Is that? And actually, aren't you? You're not retired yet, are you? No, not yet. He does it till November. He does it with a genuine concern and a personal investment every time that he advocates for people or issues. And you can see that whether he was dealing with individuals on the state level and getting a cooperation from others in the legislature for what he wanted. But you could also see it when he was on the floor talking. And it was, you knew that what he was saying was truthful and very respectful of the people he was dealing with and the people he was advocating for. So I will miss Dennis. He was always up in front in the important chairs. We're in the back in the less important chairs. and you could always look to what he had to say about an issue. So I will miss Dennis very, very much, Representative Avery. He will always be Representative Avery. We've talked about unemployment insurance and the education, a little bit about jobs, and we can talk about jobs in a minute. I think there's a lot of discussion there you all would like to hear about, including the fact that any new business in the state now can receive a credit up to 10% of the wages, and that will encourage these small businesses, we hope. There's a new program called Hire. Don't know a whole lot about it because it's still in the starting stages. There's going to be a new ombudsman developed, and we hope it's better than the situation with CPS, but this is going to help folks, I think, get through the paperwork and the bureaucracy. And more than anything, in my respect in dealing with individuals here and getting what they need on the state level, it has been bureaucracy. It has been helping people work through these issues of working with people they don't know on a state level, going to the right people, and following up. That is a very serious concern that all of us should have. So an ombudsman is a very important role. Excuse me, I've got a cold coming on. I thought what I'd talk to you about, first of all, is the legislation. I know, get over there, sorry. Is the legislation for FSSA, because we weren't successful, but in a way we were, and let me explain why. Keeping the heat on, so to speak, is something that one of the a regional manager mentioned to me here in a recent meeting. The fact that we had bills, the fact that people knew we were serious, the fact that we had testimony, that we are still pushing for good treatment of people who are clients of Medicaid and food stamps and TANF, good and fair treatment. That's important. It's being recognized, and we'll continue to do that. We have now issued a request to the chair of Medicaid Oversight to entertain questions where he would ask the Secretary of FSSA to report to Medicaid on an ongoing basis. He is interested in doing that, and I've submitted questions. We'll continue doing that. We also want to make sure that the taxpayer is treated fairly, that the money that's being spent is being spent in the best interest of Hoosiers, and that we are not overspending, because we found out early on that another $180 million had been added to that budget. That is now $1.34 billion for the privatization of Family Social Services Administration. So we will not let that issue go. We will continue to fight for transparency and accountability and a good quality of service for people. The legislation that was successful, and I think is very significant, that I was involved in, had to do with helping homeowners, and that was the first session, and that was on helping them avoid foreclosure if they were at risk of foreclosure. This time what we picked up was the abandoned, vacated, foreclosed homes that we're seeing more of in all income levels in our communities across the state. And we put into effect an opportunity for local communities to be able to sell the properties, put them on the market, get them to the sheriff's sale at a faster rate than they are now by the lending institutions simply assigning that property to the local code enforcement. And I'll tell you why I think this is significant. Not only is it significant that it pushes more houses through the system, but it is an example of being able to work together, which is so important in the legislature. You've got to have folks on both sides of the aisle who are willing and able to communicate with trust and to work problems out. And this problem of this issue went on and on and on, and I was afraid we weren't going to get it solved. And in those last minutes, at 11th hour, it was the bankers who came to the table with the solutions that are in the law now. And I think that's significant of this working relationship that we have to be able to say to them, this is what we need in the communities. You don't like what I'm doing. What is it that we can talk about and come to solutions on that will present this final result but that you'll be able to support. And that's where this collaboration, and that was across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats, because as you know, the Republican Senate, so many of my things that on this line of financial institutions died in the Senate. I couldn't get a hearing on them. And there's a lot of financial institution, what shall I say, support in the Senate. And so I needed to be able to deal with the Senate, and I think that it's very positive that we've developed those relationships and can get something done for the people. A couple other things we did, which I am really pleased with. I tried last year to get the minority and women-owned business through on its own bill, and again, as Bob was talking about, didn't get that done. Got it into a bill in the 11th hour, so that we do have now legislation for minority and women-owned business, that where there is state funds that is in a contract and to be used on public property on a local level, that the commission at the state will be setting targets for that use. And so that gives another stimulus to small business being the greatest growth in our state, for women and minority-owned business. And I'm very, very pleased with that. The other is the local reorganization, consolidation changes, which in part were responding to some changes the Chamber wanted, but I initially wanted to make sure that we had fiscal accountability. So now there is a requirement that the reorganization plan be on the internet within 30 days after it's been finalized, and that there will be a statement in this plan whether or not there's a fiscal study, and whether that study is available to the public. And there are some changes that should save us money locally, and that have to do with the elections of not only the ballot, the referendum when it can be held, and then also the elections. So I was real pleased with this session. It was shorter, but I'll tell you the days were longer, so I don't know. It was just as compact, and I, again, appreciate the opportunity. Really appreciate the opportunity of you all coming up and telling us what your concerns are, because that's where it begins. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the last shot from Representative Avery.
I think I've probably already had my turn, but I did want to say one thing that I think should be said. This last 7 years, I've had the pleasure of serving with Trent Van Haften, and he is one of the most dedicated, most able members of the legislature. It's one of the best people that I've had a chance to work with over the years. The legislature will certainly miss him. When Trent went to the microphone, people listened, and sometimes politicians will go to the microphone and then say, "Oh, it's time to go get a cup of coffee," or give me step out for a few minutes. But when Trent went to the microphone, you listened, because he has that kind of credibility. And if you were the Republican that he went up to oppose, they started shaking too, because he could ask very probing questions to make life very difficult for them at the microphone. But he is one of the most able members of the legislature, someone that worked very hard representing his constituency, and someone that I tremendously respect. And he will be a wonderful congressman, and will serve us very well. And but I just thought that someone should say that about Trent, because I think he was also a person that will bring to Washington, D.C. something that they sorely need, and that's the ability to work with members of both parties, and because he was able to do that. His Public Policy Committee, the membership worked together, and you never saw strife or conflict coming out of that, well, rarely did, coming out of that committee, because he brought them together, and that's something that I think our U.S. Congress needs right now more than anything else, is that ability. And but he's a great guy, and we're going to miss him, but we're going to have a great congressman.
Thank you. Now it's your turn, and I'm glad to see people already raising their hands. What we're going to wind up doing is I'll call on folks. We'll kind of do this similar to what we've done before, just move side to side, and we'll just keep going until we're out of time or everybody's had a chance, and we'll just kind of see how much time we have left for other things. We'll start, actually, I forgot exactly when we started last time, but this time we'll start on this side. John, I'll let you go first. Please step up to the microphone.
Good morning. I too want to add my respect to Dennis Avery. Of all the legislators I've ever known, he's treated his office with respect and dignity, and I've never found a more honest politician. That said, I'm really concerned about the direction of our state and our community, frankly. Two things happened recently. There was an effort to pass a smoking ordinance in Evansville, and it was stalemated. And then 3 days later, before the Board of Zoning Appeals, residential wind energy turbines were turned down. That coupled with the net metering thing that Senator Dodd was talking about, and the fact that just died after it seems that everybody in the state wants it, except for a few people apparently. The politics trumping the public interest, I am frankly sick and tired of. And I'm looking for people who are willing to stand up and say the public interest is more important than the politics. And frankly, it seems that that's in pretty short demand. You know, whether it's smoking at the local level or smoking at the state level, or a Rockport, Indiana gasification plant that the state's willing to cause all the citizens of Indiana to pay a premium for the price of the gas that they heat their home with, just so a company from Louisiana can get rich on a technology that is antiquated already before we're going into it. I guess I've been trying to practice being a public citizen now for probably about as long as Dennis has been in the legislature, and I've never seen the public interest just walked on by the political system as much as I am now, and I just wanted to express that dismay.
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Why am I surprised to see Dennis' hand go up first? Representative Avery.
Thank you, John. I agree with your comments. I'm not quite as harsh with on our members of the delegation because there's honest disagreement on a lot of issues. But on both issues, I agree with your final assessment that I, of course, supported all legislation dealing with the smoking ban at the state level, and regret that the local government was not able to pass legislation dealing with smoking ban here locally. But and I voted against the legislation that creates the incentives for the Rockport coal gasification facility. In reality, what that's going to mean is that taxpayers, energy users around the state of Indiana, will be forced to buy this particular energy at a price that the Public Service Commission negotiates with, and that will mean a very significant increase in energy cost in the future if this actually comes about. There are a lot of questions that this is not going to happen, that it'll all collapse at some point in the future. But if it does come about, it's going to mean higher energy costs for everybody, and not just a little bit higher, significantly higher. And I didn't vote for it because I don't think that's in the best interest of the consumer, and that's why I voted against it. And there have been several bills to make this possible, and there was one again this year that passed in the property tax bill which I voted against too. As I said, my last two votes were no votes, and I kind of thought that was really consistent with what I've been doing a lot this year. So I was kind of glad to get vote no on my last two bills, but not my bills, their bills, but because I didn't think they were very good bills. But anyhow, I did vote against that bill too, and I agree with your final assessment.
Thank you. Next is Senator Dodd, then Representative Regan.
John, I agree with you. I mean, the smoking ban at a local level was very contentious, and it is at a state level too. I think the House wanted to pass smoking, and it comes to the Senate, and they say, well, it hurts business too much. Now, initially, a couple years ago, when I first went in the legislature, I was for local businesses deciding their own avenue on smoking. And then since then, I think I mentioned here at one of the Meet Your Legislatures that I kind of changed my viewpoint on it. And I think that's good for us to change our viewpoints on things. And I stopped at restaurants and bars and talked to people about this. And I think the consensus is, you don't get a total buy-in, but most people think that if you can have a level playing field, which is a total ban of smoking, they're okay with it. But then you see at a state level and local level, you see casinos exempted and private clubs exempted, and then it starts to throw everything in the mix. But I told people to state this past year, if it's a total ban, including casinos, I'd vote for it. And I think that's what it needs to be. If we're going to have a smoking ban, let's make it the same across the board. If it hurts business at the casinos, what they're saying it's going to do, it's hurting business, local bars, and they're not being exempted from it, but public or private clubs would. So, like I said, if it's total ban, I'd be in favor of it, but it has to be a total ban. You mentioned the coal gasification plant, and I voted in favor of that. It was last year legislation that passed, and there was a clause in there. It said, I don't remember the exact wording, John, but it talked about looking out for the ratepayers or protecting the ratepayers, something in that instance. And at that time, I had conversations with you among a lot of people that gas prices have dropped dramatically, and the feasibility of this plant being built, there's no way it could happen because it was going to be 3 times the amount they're going to charge for natural gas than what it is you can buy it for now, I believe. And it's probably about right there now, about 3 times as much. So I don't see the feasibility of being able to build that plant, although I voted in favor of it in hopes that in the future, if gas prices do go up, right now they look like they're going to stay down, and we have plenty of natural gas, that it would be feasible to build it. And then I saw just recently they're looking to go ahead and move forward with it. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that because it was federal pass-down money, I think about $2 billion.
Should probably be more than that.
Yeah, coming down from the federal government at no interest to the state of Indiana. The way they were bringing the money through was kind of strange through the Indiana Finance Authority. And I did bring it up on this legislation this year on the tax bill, I believe, Dennis, what you're talking about. So that does have concerns. I think it has merit too. But I guess we'll see if it's feasible to do it. And if it's not, I don't see it being built. I do agree with you that there's a lot of hard-headed people up there that don't want to give. I can't quite understand. A lot of times what I've seen, and I know Dennis in his 36 years being up there, that you have to take little baby steps to get somewhere with legislation. Sometimes it takes years and years and years to work on something and get something passed. And I think that's why the way it was with the net metering bill last year and this year, we should have made some effort to try to get something passed, and then next year we can come back and try to change some more things and make it better. But when all of a sudden it just dies, that's bad. There's a lot of good bills that died. Real quickly, I was going to tell you, a lot of people ask me how many bills are introduced. There was 811 bills introduced this year, 420 in the Senate, and 391 in the House. And actually, the ones that have passed, maybe not signed by the governors yet, 115 bills, 61 in the Senate, 54 in the House. So that's 1 out of 8 bills that's introduced actually passed. So anyway, it's interesting to see the process go through, and it does take buy-in from both sides, and I think that's what we're lacking nowadays too. So thanks for bringing it up, John.
Thank you. Next is Representative Regan.
Thank you. First of all, in the smoking ordinance, I supported whatever Representative Charlie Brown could get through. I mean, he has been absolutely fantastic in trying to negotiate to get a bill through, and it was very disturbing that, in fact, that did not come about. I talked recently with a city council person here. I feel that if we can get a resolution, and I appreciate all the comments on the smoking, if we can get a resolution from each of the councils, the county and the city, to proceed further and get an idea of what they think would be acceptable, I think, I'd like to bring it back on the state level again. I'm sure that Charlie Brown will. I know that we now have another supporter, and that's great. We just need to find something to, as he says, the baby steps, get something that the Senate can agree, and then keep progressing on. And casinos is one that is a hot button issue. Maybe not for down here because we don't have a problem with banning it, but in other parts of the state, that's a very, very serious concern where they are so close to their competitors. So we need to consider that when we talk about a smoking ban. But certainly, I think that we will make more progress in this next legislature. I think so many things that were held up because of fear of what it might do to business. And in some way, that's a positive. In the state, the legislators are listening, and they're very concerned about what's happening to business. It did hurt us on many, many good bills. You're absolutely correct. But I think the smoking ordinance is not dead. I wanted to ask you, John, can you tell me on the wind turbine, was it because of a setback? Why did that fail? I really don't know. I'd like to know a little more if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was at the BZA, and basically it was one of the comments that was made by one of the members was, well, I'm afraid to go forward with this and be first. And where they're wanting to do this is, and then there was a discussion about property value reduction because of these 3 small wind turbines, and this is the property values for the residential area that's there. Probably the whole block you could buy for $20,000. So if there's a 50% reduction in the property values there, it's $10,000. It's fear. Evansville, it seems to me, is wanting to maintain its ties with the 1950s so badly that it refuses to come into the 21st century. And that was basically what I read in the smoking ordinance as well as the wind turbine. It was tradition. We can't break tradition.
Is it the reason I mention is because the gentleman that I've talked to regarding the wind turbine is that of course, they are very noisy, and most places that are instituting some regulation through rezoning are talking about 1,500-foot setbacks. So, I do think there is some consideration there. If you could address that.
Okay, I'd love to address that. These are small wind turbines. They've got 6-foot blades on them. These are not being the turbines that are commercial turbines that are at utility scale. Now, the 1,500-foot setback that you're talking about is utility scale stuff, which are 100 meters in the air and have 300-foot blades. Blades, or at least the diameter's about a football field in length. So there's very big difference. These were, I think, 10 kilowatt turbines versus a 1.5 megawatt turbine. They are designed specifically for residential use. They were going to put 3 of them on a commercial building that was right there on the Lloyd Expressway. That would have been a great welcome to the community. We are interested in wind, and
wow.
We probably should put them on top of the Civic Center. Something akin to this. But if we, I compared it to TV antennas back in the 1950s. I was thinking, well, maybe I appeal to the 50s mentality. The TV antennas, I remember we were the first people with a TV antenna on the top of our house in Shelbyville, Indiana. And, it was not 6 months later that everybody had them. And nobody complained. Noise may be an issue with a great big wind turbine, but I'll tell you what, the issue of social cost, like noise and that sort of thing with wind turbines, is minuscule compared to the cost that we have in death and ecological destruction from the coal plants that we currently get our electricity from.
Is the issue dead? It wouldn't. They can bring it back.
I think that Mr. Peterlin plans to come back. It's probably interesting because he isn't asking for any government support to build these. That is the reason he's not getting any support from the government.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump in there with a comment as well. I did not attend this last BZA here, but I attended one in the Board of Zoning Appeals in Warwick County about an individual who wanted to put a turbine on his house. And there were some complaints there about noise and about other things. But I testified at that particular one. I would have been at this one if I'd known about it. But the situation is, if anybody gets a chance to drive through Benton County, there are a lot of the huge commercial turbines up there. Just go up 41 and 63 and back on 41 in Benton County. And there are a couple of those turbines that are very close to the road, pretty close anyway. I've stopped along the side of the road when one of those was running. And the turbine was moving, and I couldn't hardly hear it. And that was the big one. That was not a little residential model. That was a huge commercial operation. I didn't find it noisy at all. What we're going to wind up having to face eventually, as our natural resources of oil and gas and coal are depleted, which they are depleting very rapidly, we have to be in a position to move to something else. And we're going to wind up making that transition eventually. The question is how traumatic it's going to be. The longer we wait, the more catastrophic it will be to make the transition. That's my soapbox.
Jim, can I make a comment?
Sure. go
Just a
ahead.
short one. I think we need a lot more education, and I think that the fact that you all are speaking out, that's what we need. We need more education on the issue. One good note, though, is, speaking environmentally, I know that you all were very, very successful in finally getting the parking lot rezoning requirements changed so that we are going to have parking lots that are a lot more, what shall I say, environmentally sensitive than they were before, and the improvements. And that took 2 years, 3 years?
Runoff friendly.
Runoff friendly, and that took 2 years or something. And so, I mean, it takes time, but just keep it up.
Thank you. We will move on to another issue, but as we do, right before we do, John, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Would you mind getting me a cup of water, please? Thank you. A little hydropower. Okay, now we're on this side, right up in the front. Please step up to the microphone.
Martha Stott, Vanderburgh County. My question is, what happened in the House? I believe the Senate passed the E-Verify, did they not, in the Senate? And it was not even brought before the House, and I just wondered what happened to E-Verify.
What is E-Verify?
E-Verify?
Immigration.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
The senator died.
It did go through committee, but it didn't come to the floor for a vote this year.
For the Senate?
Yeah, but it did go through committee. Now, what the holdup was?
I don't understand what the holdup is.
Yeah, I don't know what the holdup was either. E-Verify actually verifies immigration of employees, and I think this legislation, the way it was written, was for state employees first. To make sure they check state employees. And I think actually there was a state employee that was illegal, and I think they quickly made an exit. Don't know exactly what happened with all of it, but it did go through committee. It didn't get a hearing on the. I think it didn't take a vote. They didn't take a vote in the committee is what happened, and this was a second year. This was a scaled down version, I guess, actually of last year's immigration language. And I don't know if the President Pro Tem, Senator Long, just held it up or exactly what happened. I can't comment on that, but for some reason it didn't come to a vote in the committee at all. But I do know this was probably the second year we actually did vote on it. I was on pensions labor last year. We had it come through our committee last year, and we heard 40 or 50 hours of testimony from the public on that. But I don't know what the hang-up was this year, to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what happened.
Other responses? Okay, we'll move on. We are back on this side of the room. I see a gentleman over there. Please step up to the microphone.
My name is Ray Ryan. I'm the president of the Retired Federal Employees Group in Evansville. My issue is tax parity for retired people. There are three separate groups of retired employees in the state of Indiana. One is those who retired under Social Security. A couple would receive approximately $25,000 tax exemption on their pension. The railroad retirees receive almost $50,000. Civil servant retirees receive $2,000, and for just the employee only, if he dies and leaves his annuity, the spouse receives nothing. And what I'd like to see is some kind of parity in the taxation of retired federal employees' pensions. The state of Indiana is different. Every state taxes their retirees different. You can move to any number of other states and receive parity or pay no tax at all on your pension. For instance, you can move to Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, but not Ohio. Ohio does have a little bit better deal than Indiana, but so you might figure if you're not a federal employee, it doesn't concern you, but it does because the state of Indiana can't attract retired civil servants, and they have trouble keeping them because you can move to practically any other state and get a better deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Responses from legislator. We'll start with you. Sure.
Ray, I'm going to ask you a quick question. How many states do or do not allow tax-free pensions for federal employees? How many? Is there 5 or 6, or is there more than that? I know it's not more than 15.
I don't know right off my hand, but I think you're about right.
Okay.
In your.
All right. Thank you.
There are some that totally exempt the retired employees' annuity, not their total income. In my case, and several of us, we got a dog in more than one race, because I also receive Social Security from previous employment in the public domain, which when I retired, because I had another pension, they cut my Social Security in half, but that's another issue.
Okay, continue responses.
Okay.
Senator Dragg, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Ray. Actually, this year I got on legislation that would allow tax-free pensions for federal employees in the state of Indiana. And what I found out, and this legislation came about for years and years and years and years, and I think there's not more than 15 states that actually tax federal employees' pensions. And what Ray was talking about also is a lot of them don't get Social Security. And I think I was here at your Meet Your Legislators one day and said I was for tax-free pensions of federal employees, and a lady called me and was upset with me at my office in Indianapolis because she said, if they get tax-free pensions, I want tax-free pensions. I said, well, there's a lot of difference in the way they get their pensions, and they don't get Social Security like a lot of people do. And like I think Ray talked about, he gets his Social Security cut in half. And then his wife gets a less cut because she never, worked at a job either. So, if that person dies, and then the widow gets a really reduced amount of money. So it's unfair across the board how it's done. Now, what a lot of people came to me before I got in this legislation, talked to me about was they're going to other states retiring because it's tax-free pension for them. They can go, a lot of places, people go to Arkansas and retire, or Kentucky, or Texas. And I've even had people call me and said, I'm living in Indiana illegally. I'm actually a resident of another state, but I'm living here. So I can get a tax-free pension from the federal government. And so it's unbelievable what's going on. But I'm in favor of that, Ray, of trying to find parity on that, especially the exemptions you're talking about, the 25,000, 2,000 exemptions. And I will do everything I can in the future to try to help that. Whether it gets hearings or not is another story. It hasn't for years. But and before long, that group of employees are going to be gone. They're going to be dead and gone. So the people we're trying to help now are actually going to be gone, and we're not going to be able to help them. So I think that's what they're waiting on, Ray, unfortunately.
1986, they changed the retirement system.
Yeah.
So like you say, we're dying. We're like them Notch babies. The problem is solved when we're dead.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next is Representative Avery.
Just briefly, I've likewise co-sponsored, authored, co-authored this legislation in the past too, to treat federal employees with equity. It costs money though, and it's not going to happen until we do something about our fiscal situation, and we have to do that before we can pass legislation like this. I don't think it costs as much as is projected by Legislative Services Agency, because I also believe that we would see less flight of our employees to other states. I'm not sure we'd stop people from going to Florida when they get older, because they go for perhaps other reasons than just taxes. They go for the weather, perhaps, and maybe my ex-wife will move back home if we pass something like this. I doubt that, but and nevertheless, it is a matter of fairness, and I'll lobby my state senator next year on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next issue on this side of the room again. I see a hand going up in the middle here. Please step up to the microphone.
Yes, my name is Dennis Steffi, and Dennis, I want to thank you for your 36 years as a representative there. And as a master gardener, I want to thank you for the land there on the state hospital property there. We use it very effectively.
Yes, you did. I was there yesterday.
Oh, good. I've been by there several times. But anyhow, thank you. What I want to talk about is the health care reform bill. And you say why this is a federal issue. But it will affect the states. It's not a completely federal issue. It will affect the states. And I have had correspondence with Representative Ellsworth's staff quite extensively, and he has sent me emails with 6 different attachments, and I've gone through all those attachments, and I've read part of it, and the representative that sent to me is strictly for the bill, of course, as Ellsworth voted for. Now, on this is very controversial. There are issues. You're going to have 50% say that they're for it, 50% are going to say that are against it. I'm going to zero in on one issue alone, and that is abortion. And that's what I'm zeroing in right now. But I got this stuff here, and I picked out some of the stuff here, from those 6 emails that he sent me, or attachments. And I am under the contention that abortion is still a part of the health care bill. I've got both of these 2 pages which will attest to that fact. Also, there's most probably part of it in there that attests that it's not. So that's what I'm saying. It's controversial both ways. Now, what it is and what I want to zero in on, I'll write this, I'll say this right here, right now, first of all. And it says here, the Senate bill, and it says paragraph 1303, paragraph B, paragraph I, paragraph A, paragraph J, like the House bill, provides that qualified health plans may not be required to provide abortion as an essential benefit. It says there may not be required. So consequently, if it cannot be required, it could be required. It can go both ways. That's just what I'm saying. It's very controversial. There's other little items in here. Section 1303 permits states, let's see, I'll skip that part right here. Another one says here that a plan cannot be required to cover abortion as an essential health benefit, means that it cannot be required to cover abortions. Again, both ways. You got both ways. I will also go through here, and this is what I got from Ellsworth's office. Let's see here. Okay, Section 1303A permits states to totally outlaw abortion coverage in policies issued through the exchange. And that's what I want to zero in on. In states where abortion coverage through the exchange is outlawed under Section 1303A, no plans will offer abortion coverage. And that's what I want to zero in on, is can we get the Senate or the legislature in their next session to outlaw abortions through the state? The states, there are some states already have this outlawed, and they won't have to worry about abortion coverage. And I just want to know what Indiana can do. That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators. Well, and Representative Avery is first.
I I just love going first. Indiana already has a law that says we don't pay for any kind of abortions with state revenues, state money. And of course, I believe the Hyde Act at the federal level also says that they don't pay for abortions with federal money. And I believe there was a lot of argument about this issue for political reasons and not necessarily because of anything that's actually in the law. And I've spoken to people that were supposedly experts on this legislation that said that there is no abortion funding in this law, that the people that are against it, there are a lot of legitimate reasons to be against it. But I don't believe that's one of the reasons to oppose this legislation. And at the state level, we already have a law that doesn't provide for abortion funding, and so I don't know that it's necessary to have a second law that does the same thing. But I won't be there, so I'll lobby my senator again. But no, but the other individuals here probably will be there, and so you probably should chat with them. And I think they will do work with our Legislative Services Agency to make sure of how it impacts the state of Indiana. I do believe there's going to be a need for the state of Indiana to come in compliance with several sections of this law. I'm not sure what they are at this point, but I'm sure that our staff, the Legislative Services Agency, will be researching that issue during the interim, that's the interim between this session and next session, to determine what is necessary for us to come in compliance with. Most of that bill doesn't go into effect. It goes into effect over time, and a lot of it will have an immediate impact, but much of it won't. But I'm sure our staff will be researching the issue and what's in the bill, not what people fear is in the bill. But thank you for being here. And the Master Gardeners is a wonderful organization. I've enjoyed working with them, and I've learned a great deal. And I was out there checking out the berry patch yesterday to see what needs to be done. And they're little critters, not little critters, they're little plants just waiting to burst out of the ground as soon as they get a little more sunshine. And I'm anxious for it to happen.
Probably some little critters waiting to eat them, too. Next, Senator Dyke.
Thank you, Dennis. And real quick on the Master Gardeners, in Posey County, they have it's called a Southwestern Indiana Azalea Trail, and I've already seen at the courthouse they've already got some plaques put up, and you can go all the way through Posey County on this trail. It's beautiful. They do a great job at the courthouse and the public facilities there. It's beautiful there, and I get comments about it all the time. So I try to thank them for that. So if you see them, tell them thank you. On the health care reform, and you're talking about abortion, money for abortions, the way I understand this, Dennis, is it doesn't expand anything that the federal government now does. It doesn't add anything or subtract anything for what the abortion coverage is right now. And I think you kind of alluded to that on both sides. I agree with Representative Avery about the state law right now. But I will, I'm a pro-life Democrat, and if there is something that comes forward, I will definitely favor stopping money for abortions in the state of Indiana. And abortion is a sticky subject with a lot of politicians and public servants, but I look at it as incest, rape, and if a mother's life is in danger, but I am pro-life, and I will vote in favor of something like that if it does come through next year or the next coming years. So.
Okay, thank you. Next, Representative Regan.
And of course, I think Dennis has explained what the state position is. There are issues about health that are in that new law, the new federal law, that I think are going to impact the state and impact it monetarily. And I know that LSA is looking at them, and one of them has to do with the Healthy Indiana plan that we have now and what happens to that. And it is going to increase the number of folks that are going to be eligible for services, and that, of course, then does impact. And hopefully this next legislature will be able to tell you more, because I know that they are reviewing that this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up comment on that?
Sure.
Okay, just real quick,
Senator
she was talking about the HIP program, the Healthy Indiana plan. Right now, the federal government funds that about 2/3 for the state of Indiana right now. So, and then the other money comes from the cigarette tax increase, the 44-cent increase in cigarette taxes that I voted for a few years ago to help have insurance for the underinsured. So, but most people don't realize that the federal government does subsidize that by 2/3 right now. So.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next issue. We are back on this side of the room. I see the lady right here in the front. Please step up to the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Robin Ratcliffe, and I am an adopted mother of a son who needs your help. He was adopted by my husband and I at 3.5 from the Department of Child Services. He was still in diapers and could not talk to communicate. He had a foster family that wanted to adopt him. Instead, he was traumatized by abuse when the department attempted to reunite him with his mother at 2 years old. After this, he had 2 failed placements. Over the years, he has been a challenge to raise. Even with a degree and experience in social work, it did not prepare me for his many needs that he has. At 13, he started showing signs of attachment disorder. He was stealing, lying, seeking out porn, and becoming abusive to me. We asked the Department of Child Services to help us, and we have received no help. We were able to receive respite and in-home family therapist through the Indiana State Special Needs Adoption that I had found online. I also had him seen at our local community mental health center, and his problems are still escalating. At 14, he tried to hit me, and my husband stepped in to protect me and by restraining him. Our son got hurt in the struggle and now lives at Hillcrest. And the Vanderburgh County Child Services has to help us now and is still refusing to help us. I need your help. Number 1, please help pass laws that give our judges the final say in the outcome of these children. It's a law that Dennis actually is wanting to follow through with. Number 2, please protect services that help these children. I wish we had known about Evansville Psychiatric Child Services last year, because now he's 14 and he's too old to receive services there. And number 3, make the Department of Child Services responsible for their conduct to all children, especially to the ones that are adopted from their care. Thank you.
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Avery is first.
I know we've been in communications on numerous occasions, and my legislative services, my legislative aide. I hit delete when I retired from the legislature, and my brain is not working, but has worked a great deal on this, and with letters and contact with various state agencies. I thought we had worked through most of these problems, and I regret to hear that we had not.
We were at court this week, and they are wanting to continue to do Southwestern services at Southwestern and services with an in-home family therapist, but neither of them, both of those services have been in place for almost a year, and he's still escalating. And now he's at Hillcrest, and he's becoming very institutionalized.
Yeah. Well, I think Hillcrest does a wonderful job, but it's not for every child, and there needs to be more appropriate placement of children in Indiana. The comment you made about my working on issue where the judge makes the final determination on placement, it's something that I've been upset about for several years since a few years ago when the property tax bill that we passed, that I voted against that too, but what it did was a part of that. I think I've heard Bob talk about the state takeover of education. Now 100% of the cost of the general fund for education is paid for by the state. So the state has really taken over education, and state policy education policy will be directed by the state in the future. And I think we're going to see a lot of frustrated people at the local level. But we did the same thing with child welfare, and the state took over child welfare. And so when a judge hears a case of abuse and neglect, the judge doesn't make a determination on placement anymore. The pointy-headed bureaucrats sitting in Annapolis will make that determination on the placement of a child. And they will overturn the decision of the judge that sat there and heard the testimony, heard the evidence, heard from the CASA, the Court-Appointed Special Advocate, heard from the witnesses. The judge heard that testimony, and so they make a recommendation on placement of the child. Then a staff person sitting in Annapolis takes a look at the paperwork, says, nope, it's not going there, it's going to go over here. And that's what's unfortunate. The judge should be the one making the determination, and not a 24-year-old or young staff person sitting in Indianapolis. It's never met the child, never met the parents, never met the CASAs, the people that look into this case. Anyhow, I've had a bill a couple times to make that correction, where the final determination will be made by the judge. And I would hope that the new legislature takes a look at that issue. I had it in, I forget the bill number, Senate Bill something, 149, I believe, or 149, something like that, this last year. And it got through the House and the Senate, and I went into conference committee. We reached an agreement on part of it, but that section came out because the Senate would not allow that in there. Representative Lawson, who's a wonderful person, but just disagreed with me on that. But that did come out of the bill, and I regretted that. But then our leadership refused to even let the bill come to a final vote because it didn't get to Rules Committee. So that bill was lost, and did a number of important things, but that was the DCS, Department of Children's Services bill. But that's one thing that needs to be taken up by future legislatures, so that I think a judge is in a much better position to make that decision than some staff person in Annapolis that works for DCS. Send me an email to remind me, because I'll write it down, and I'll call my legislative assistant, Mike Thrall. You know Mike, and he'll start back on it, see if we can get, and you might want to tell him what needs to be done and what the experts say need to be done, because it's not a clear-cut decision and clear-cut issue. And
going to a specialist, we're paying for it. My husband and I are paying for him to go see a specialist in Indianapolis. There's only 2 in the state of Indiana, and he's going to see him regardless, whatever the cost is to us personally.
I think you see by this discussion the impact that some of these bills has on real life situations in Indiana, and how it impacts children, how it impacts families, and I've dealt with a lot of these issues over the years, and it seemed like nothing is ever fixed, and we keep working, and new people will keep working at least, and again, I'll lobby my senator on this one too.
Thank you. Next, Representative Rican.
Thank you. And Representative Avery, I haven't talked with you about this, but I was wondering, and for you too then, Senator Dye to be representative, it seems to me that can be addressed in the new budget. Is there not a way that, I was thinking that might be the next step, is when we're talking about funding, is being able to really look into it, because it's not, I don't know anyone that supports it. I mean, I don't even know why the Senate supports it. They even had to add to the budget to make that system work. What, 1.6 million or so they had to add to the budget to make that new middle level of bureaucracy work. So I don't know how in the world, I don't know why we can't argue sufficiently against that. I think we need to try, and we're in a budget year. Can you comment?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a budget issue, even though what they did passed in the budget. But I do think it's important that we make the policy correction, and then of course we then have to appropriate money, transfer the money, or appropriate money for the various programs. But I believe it's a policy issue, and the bill that I had did not necessarily make the complete correction. It dealt with out-of-state placement of children. Was proposed. One of the proponents was Win Moses, and that's one of the reasons it died, is because it only dealt with out-of-state placement, and it should have, I think, dealt with everything. But the Senate, I think there's a lot of agreement we need to do something about it. But in an election, I mentioned earlier this was an election year, so everything was reviewed as political, and some of these things aren't political; they're just a matter of common sense. But they didn't want to embarrass the DCS director, and I didn't either. I personally think Judge Payne has done a wonderful job. I have tremendous respect for Judge Payne. Don't always agree with him, but I have tremendous respect for him, and I've said that on numerous occasions. I think he's done more than any director of of child welfare services that I've served with over the years. He's done more. However, there's some things he's done that's not been in the interest of children, and that this is certainly one of them, and it's something that needs to be fixed. And the effort was not to embarrass him, but the effort was to fix the problem.
Puerto Rican is, and I'd like her to state her position on the abortion issue.
Certainly. I am on record as being a person who supports pro-choice, and I would like to explain that. I myself do not believe in abortion, and my daughters, and I have always taught them, I do not believe in it myself, but I believe very strongly that women ought to have the right to control their own bodies.
Representative Avery.
I love to get in the middle of things.
No.
The United States Supreme Court has clearly ruled that a woman does have a right to decide, and it would be unconstitutional for us to deny that right. And we, however, have a responsibility to regulate. And over the years, I have voted for bills and I've angered both sides over the years. Because even Right to Life, I think, has me with a 60% voting record, and and that's because I have voted on numerous occasions to regulate abortions and to make common sense decisions on the regulation of abortions, not just to pimp the issue, which I think too many legislators try to do, but the court ruling has been very clear that there is a constitutional right to choice, and to do otherwise is unconstitutional, and until that Constitution is amended, there's nothing to be done about that. But so that's how I have voted consistently over the years, and I think I voted correctly, and I'm still here.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next issue on this side of the room. I see the hand up right here, and yes, sir. Please step up to the microphone.
I'm Bob Worth out in Newburgh, and I really wanted to get educated a little bit better on the school funding issue, because it's so critical to everyone. And I guess it just seems to me like there's got to be an overriding principle, and what that overriding principle should be, and maybe it's there. I hope it is in the state government. Every kid in the state should have an equal opportunity for the best education they can get, no matter where they are. Whether they're Central or Mount Vernon or Hamilton Southeast or Carmel. Now, I don't know the facts, but I got to believe that if you look at a kid coming out of Carmel or Hamilton Southeast, much lower dropout rates, much higher acceptance rates to the best state colleges like IU and Purdue, much better chance for IU honors program. This IU is just taking off. The quality of the university is getting so much better, and they're getting a lot of people from the Northeast. So I guess the question that I have is: are we sure that a kid that's in Mount Vernon or North has an equal opportunity for this education that a kid that goes to Carmel and Hamilton Southeast? Is there funding going to Hamilton Southeast and Carmel for programs, for educational programs that a kid from Evansville Central or North is not getting? And if that's right, that doesn't seem fair to me. And then on top of that, the thing I don't understand is how much is it costing for that lawsuit up in Hamilton Southeast and Elkhart, where they're trying to get even more money. They're trying to pile on to get even a higher proportion of the funding. And who's paying for that?
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Senator Dyke first this time.
Well, this is very complicated. If I can explain some things first. Who's paying for the cost of the lawsuit? Well, the taxpayers. Most school districts are paying for that. Okay? Well, the taxpayers of that school district, you could say, Hamilton County is paying for that. or whichever other counties are involved in that. Now, let me explain something. I voted against the two budgets I had an opportunity to vote for. I voted against those budgets because education funding was cut. And it was cut around the state, but priorities were in my home county, Posey County. New Harmony, North Posey, Mount Vernon all lost money. The last two budgets, and then in 2009, the last budget, that's when it shifted. The general fund money shifted from property taxes to sales tax money. And the state, like Dennis Avery said, Representative Avery said, is picked up all the costs of general fund money, which you probably saw property taxes decrease in areas, and that's probably the reason why. Some of the property taxes jumped right back up the next year, So did it help? I don't know. But what it's done is gave total control to public education to the state level. What it's also done is taken away school boards' control over what's going on in their schools. As you see right now across the whole state, not only Mount Vernon, or New Harmony, Hamilton Southeastern, Carmel schools, they're cutting. That's the only thing the school boards have the opportunity to do now. And it's pretty sad. But what's happened with that also, why that came about, different school districts, like I said, this is very complicated, so I hope you hang with me just for a minute. Mount Vernon School District used to be, years ago, the school districts were funded, and your assessed valuation of your property in that school district had a big effect. The higher assessed value you had, the less state money you got for your schools, okay, at one time. And Mount Vernon School District at one time was the fourth highest assessed value school district in the state of Indiana because we have all the industries down there. We have, used to be General Electric, Sabic, B&W, GAF, Country Mark Co-op. Very high assessed value property. So we got less money. The last year that was done like that, we got $600 for each student for each student in that district from the state of Indiana. $600. The rest was made up by property taxes. For example, North Posey in the same county was getting about $1,300 per student. Okay, they're getting over twice the amount of money. So the property taxes had to make up a less amount of money of that. As you see, it gets complicated. But what's happened now? The state has taken control over general fund money. They also said, okay, now each school or each student in your district is only going to get so much money. I think it's right around $5,100. I'm not for sure exactly how much it is. So what they're doing, they're saying, okay, the state's going to give you $5,100 per student. Okay? No matter if you used to spend $8,000 per student, now you're only getting $5,100, and that's all we're giving you. That's why the drastic cuts in education that you see right now. The thing I hate about it is state control of the schools, local control is gone. If my school district in New Harmony wants to have anything, build a new building or whatever, I think it ought to be local control. I really do believe that. What's happening now, or what's going to be happening, is you're going to see school transfers pick up. Segregation years ago, we had poor schools, we had wealthy schools, like you mentioned earlier. What's going to happen now is it's going to be more and more segregation. You're going to have kids, or parents take their kids away from one school district. They can take the kids from Mount Vernon School District right now. They can send them to Wrights High School or North High School if they so wish. The school transfers, I think you're going to see, is picking up. And it's going to segregate the schools more and more. And it's something we worked hard for years and years and years to get a good mix of kids in those schools. And of course, last, I hope I don't ramble on and on and on, but last, I think the families that you come from is important. It costs more money, and it's proven fact, it costs more money to educate kids from a lower income family than it does a wealthy family, or a family that has a mother and father there. It's tough on these kids. I want to explain something to you real quick. The very first year I was elected, I met a young lady from here in Evansville. She was 18 years old. She was a senior at a high school here in Evansville. Her mother and father were never home. They were gone. She was raising her little sister at home by herself. Senior in high school, she worked midnight shift at McDonald's here in Evansville. She'd get up, she'd get home from work, wake her little sister up, get her ready for school. She'd take her to school, and then she would go to school, high school. She'd get back home of the evening, get some sleep, go to work on midnight shift again at McDonald's. Parents were never there. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And what you see kids come to schools, it's not all equal. We hope that we give equal opportunity to all kids, but it's not happening, Bob. I agree with you. And what is it going to take to do that? I think what we're doing now with state money coming down is not right. I think it does cost more money to educate some kids, and other kids it doesn't. And that's a situation we're in right now. And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I wish I had the answer. I wish we'd have kept property taxes funding and local control of the schools, but it's not happening right now. So I hope I didn't ramble on. And if you got questions about this later, I can try to talk to you about it. But it's very complicated.
Thank you. Representative Rican was next, then Representative Avery.
Just a comment, and I appreciate, am I on? I appreciate the passion in which Senator Dyke really speaks his mind, because it is a very emotional and extremely important subject to all of us. I would add, first of all, local control is very, very important. And when I was on the Education Committee, it was a theme that was in the back of my mind all the time about we must protect the local control. This year and next year, as I understand, there is a study committee that is going to looking at the formula, and that is the key, and that is what we all need to watch to understand. Because I even understand in the House side, there's probably one person right now, Representative Terry, is it? Gooden is the only one that truly understands the funding formula for the schools. We need to not only understand it, but we need to advocate for in ways in which it benefits our areas. And so I'm going to do that. I know they all will do that. And it's going to be important that we get this information to you so that you can help us.
Thank you. Representative Avery.
It's hard to find too much to add to what's been said, but I'll figure something out. But I think Bob's right, and Gail too, that and this will be one of the big issues confronting future legislatures. However, with the state takeover of funding, when that happened, I remember speaking at the microphone on the floor, and I said that it's a good idea if we're willing to step up to the plate and meet our responsibilities, and to continue to fund education as local government has done so in the past. We didn't do that. We didn't surprise me at all, but we did not meet our commitment to local schools, and we have cut funding for education over the years, and I think we're starting to see a lot of suffering by school corporations as schools close, as teachers are laid off, classroom size is growing. And one of the things that the A+ program that Governor Orr promoted stressed was smaller class size was key to quality education. Greater exposure to a qualified teacher was, for example, we went from 175 to 180 days with that same package, and I thought that was important. But we're starting to see that even erode with the cuts in education and really the state takeover in policy coming through our superintendent of public instruction, and I think we're going to look very carefully. The legislature is going to look very carefully at these issues in the next session. I do, however, with the state takeover, there is a better chance of providing for more equality if we provide that. But if the people that control the budget right now are basically people like Senator Kenley, who's, I think, a wonderful senator, but he represents a rapidly growing area, the donut of Indianapolis, and he represents a type of school corporation that the more money you put into growing enrollment school corporations, the more those school corporations benefit. But school corporations like Bob talked about in Mount Vernon that has had declining enrollment, they suffer in that same school funding formula. And so that's the debate that we're going to have next year is how, even if we do come up with more money, how do you distribute that additional money? Is it based on growing enrollment? Go fund where the children are at? That means growing enrollment school corporations. But then you cut enrollment money for declining enrollment school corporations and damage the quality of the education there. And it's going to be tough decisions will have to be made in the next couple of years, and I honestly wish I was there, but sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for, I'm not sure how many more people have some issues. I can see a couple of hands in the very back. Please step up to the microphone. We want to try to save a little time for our consolidation discussion. Roberta's been waiting very, very patiently for that. Please state your name.
My name's Corey Hurlis. I'm actually a local restaurant owner here in Evansville, and I'm sorry I'm not as educated on this as possible, but my question is we have an extra 1% food and beverage tax still here in Vandenberg County that was supposed to fund the airport many years ago, and I think was supposed to go away. Why can't that money, or what's it being used for now, but why can't that money help support our education system here in Vandenberg County or around the surrounding areas?
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Avery.
I was a co-author of the legislation that created the local option food and beverage tax that initially funded the airport terminal construction, and when that was paid off, the bonding issue, we transferred it to the bond issue for the convention center. So right now it's being used to pay the bond issue at the convention center, and one thing I've learned over the years is taxes don't go away, and they'll find another good use for those tax revenues in the future. But right now I think is meeting a good use, and that's to provide the bond issue. Otherwise, that would be on the property taxpayer. And food and beverage tax is one, especially when you come from a heavily from a commercial area where we have a lot of shopping, a lot of restaurants, and other type of facilities like that. You produce a lot of revenue, and it can be used from people outside the area, which is, I think most of us would prefer that they help with the payment of a lot of our programs, not just the people in Vandenberg County. But anyhow, that is being used for that, and I doubt that we're going to, in fact, we can't take it because it's committed to that bond issue, and it would take a state law to change it, and I don't think we could do that because we've got to pay off that bond. But thank you.
Thank you. Senator Dyke.
And I'll add the bond issue, I think 2014 or 2016, and then that money from there is going to go to the arena, pay for the arena. So
that's true.
2018. Okay. And real quick, you asked why can't that money be used for schools? Because it's not designed, the way the state law is right now is not designed like that. You can't take local money and put it to your schools. Now, that's something that we might look at in the future. Maybe look at local option taxes. Like right now, if a county adopts local option income taxes, that money cannot go to schools either. But it can go to your local counties and be distributed to the levy authority, solid waste, the county, the city government, things like that. But it can't go to schools. And that's one of the things schools said, hey, wait a minute, we don't get a cut of that local option income tax. So that's something we might look for in the future. I don't know. I think we have to be creative. Local communities have to be creative too. I mean, they're looking at school foundations, raising money for local schools. They're looking at all kind of options. But right now, state law prohibits that. So,
thank you. Representative Rican was next.
Could I add one little thing?
Sure.
Bob's right. But also, who would lobby against trying to use the restaurant food and beverage tax for a use other than something that's consistent with creating convention tourism and business? That would, like the arena or the convention center, the Indiana Restaurant Association would lobby bitterly against that.
Okay, we'll move on to another issue then. She decided not to, so we'll move on to another issue. We're on this side of the room. See a lady right here in the middle? Yes. Please step up to the microphone.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I'm Connie Whitman here in Evansville. It just seems like we tear down so much in Indiana. There's money to rip things out and build new stuff, a lot of construction, but nothing else. I'm not averse to change per se. For instance, you tear down a sagging porch or clean out a cluttered garage and start over. but we're tearing down perfectly good buildings and institutions. Another example of this is dismantling the townships. I don't think my ideas are probably universal or popular, but I think township government should remain, at least till we study it for a while, and is in fact being underutilized. I wish we could do a pilot study of my full employment plan that I keep trying to interest people in, with free money from a full employment job bank, with sweat equity turned into greenbacks, and pay people for volunteering, people who currently volunteer but are unemployed. For instance, I could use, like paying them $10 an hour to sit with the elderly. I have a friend in a nursing home. She said she never sees anybody except me and one of her grandsons. And if people could be paid $10 an hour to come and sit with people for a couple hours, take them places, take them shopping, sit with them, read to them, read the newspaper, read the Bible, sing, whatever, do whatever. Give them so they don't just sit there in the halls half asleep and drugged, and give them something to do. And the money would be free. I could, if anyone wants to talk about it, I'll tell you how. And I would think that the townships would be a good place to maybe start a pilot program like in Pigeon or Knight. I really think we shouldn't dismantle the townships right away. And maybe some of the voting issues could be handled by them. And I'm even in favor of a vote-mobile. Your trash truck comes down your truck every week. Why can't a voting, like a bookmobile, come down your street? Instead of talking about moving these voting centers, making them smaller and smaller and smaller, how about drive past every single house? The mailman comes to your house every day, trash truck comes to your house every week. Why can't we get somebody on your block for you to cast your vote? And I also don't believe people should be unopposed in primaries. I think if they're unopposed, you should abolish the office, or look until you find some. Really, unopposed is for the general election. Another thing I'm against is employers having to provide health insurance for their employees. If you had my job program, everybody'd have an income and they could buy their own insurance, or none, as they wish, or pay their own bills, and insurance could be used just for catastrophic illnesses or injuries. Then we need way less food stamps, way less unemployment insurance, et cetera, with this job program. And I also want to respond to somebody who mentioned smoking. I'm not a smoker, but I'm against smoking bans. There are smokeless ashtrays. There are vent fans, like over your stove in your kitchen. Why can't you put a vent fan over every single table in a restaurant? And I know for years, whenever my mother and I go to a restaurant, they say smoking or non-smoking section. Well, we always pick the non-smoking section. I've never smelled a whiff of smoke. I don't understand all these complaints people have. It seems to me there's a way to handle this where a lot more people could be satisfied. And our founding fathers were all smokers. I don't think they would approve of this at all. I really don't. And my son has served a prison sentence. It was a judge sentenced him under Indiana Code 12-something as a mental illness. So I think smokers aren't being treated right. Even though I'm not a smoker and I don't mind clean air, I think we can have it both ways if we try.
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators. Okay. Well, I've got township government to remain plus. Go ahead. Yes, certainly.
That's a lot of information. No, I just want to make a few brief comments. No, you were talking about, I always like to talk. You were talking about buildings. And actually, we passed some legislation this year for certain areas of the state to be able to utilize empty buildings. And I think that's important. I think we ought to be able to do that more and more. You go around every place around the tri-state, and there's empty buildings. And for the life of me, I can't understand how they can tear those buildings down and build a new one back up and make money from that. I really don't. But I think we ought to give tax incentives to local businesses who go into these old buildings, the old Walmarts, or the old Kmarts, or whatever's empty, to be able to utilize those buildings because they're sitting there empty. And I hate to see that. Township government, I believe it's a rural versus urban issue. There was legislation this year, came from the House, that would allow each township to vote in a referendum to keep their township government. So, we talked about this in our caucus tremendously, and I said, hey, why don't you give Marion County the opportunity to do this first? Marion County always wants to have exemptions from everything else. Let them do it and see how it works there. And that's where the problem is. Marion County, Lake County, township trustees make $80,000 a year. Their advisory board members make $27,000 a year. I live in Morris Township in Posey County. My township trustee makes about $4,500 a year, and each advisory board member makes $500 a year. Now, that's inequity. And where the problem is, they're trying to change everything throughout the whole state, in my opinion, just because of where the problems are at. Township governments seems to work better in rural areas. I believe it can possibly be consolidated in more urban areas, such as Evansville or Fort Wayne or Indianapolis or Gary, Indiana. So that's going to be coming back every year. It died this year. So let's see. You talk about vote centers. Vote centers. I was in favor of vote centers. You can have vote centers at grocery stores. So you can go to the grocery store and vote. You can go to the libraries have expanded this past few years. You can go to libraries and vote early. I think that's neat. Now, the issue with that is what the people against that say it's fraud. There's a lot of fraud. A lot of people say, why can't you just do absentee ballots where frauds are? But that's the issues with the vote centers. I'm for them. I like to make it more accessible, easy to vote, and really more and more people are voting early and at these vote centers, library, and places like that.
Okay. Are there other responses? Representative Avery.
Just briefly, your comment about we tear things down too much, and you're 100% correct. I get very frustrated when I see perfectly good buildings torn down, and then a less quality building goes up sometimes. In modern construction is we only build for 20, 30, 40 years. But there was a time in our history, and especially if you go to Europe, you see buildings that are hundreds of years old, and they're still serving a useful purpose. They're beautiful. They're built with a certain quality and a certain personality and distinction that we don't. We build shoeboxes in this country, and not a very good shoebox too. And they get torn down after 30 years, and we build a new shoebox, and that's very frustrating to see that happen. And so your comments were very good. And on township government, I voted against, consistent with my voting record this last year, voting against things, the bill dealing with township referendum too. Not that I think, personally, I think township government's an anachronism. It's a throwback to the horse and buggy days. But however, when you replace it, you have to replace it with something. And what they were doing was, it's a nice way of saying it. It was not in the public's best interest. They were creating a township referendum. For example, in Vanderbilt County, 8 townships. I believe it would pass 6 of the townships. That would mean we'd have 2 township poor release systems, one in Pigeon and one in Perry. Then we'd have a county poor release system for the other 6 townships. So we'd really have 3 poor release systems, and no one would know where to go to get their poor relief. And I thought that was not in the best interest. And not only that, it didn't even replace the poor relief levy, which is the levy that's inflicted upon each township resident to provide for poor relief in the township. It kept that poor relief system, that township levy, and the people in Pigeon Township would continue to pay more for poor relief, and the people in Perry Township would continue to pay more. And I think that poor relief should be a county-wide system where everyone in the county should support the poor relief system. It's just not a township problem. It's a community problem, and the community should support the program. And I think the bill was not well thought out, and it was, I think, designed for political reasons, and I voted against it. And the Senate, I think, I very rarely praise the Senate for anything, but I do think they made the right decision in not allowing that bill. But in the future, I will be more supportive of the Senate.
Thank you. We had wanted to save some time to have a short discussion about consolidation, we only have 15 minutes left. But this is still your event, and we want to make sure that folks in the audience have a chance to make their comments. And if we don't have time for the consolidation, we don't have time for it, because this is your Meet Your Legislators event. So we're back on this side if anybody has a comment. Yes, ma'am. Please step up to the microphone. Sounds like you don't want to.
Hello, good evening. My name is Carmen Daniels. Hi, everybody. And I am a veteran. I was here and I spoke with you last time. Since then, I've been to Marion, Illinois. I finally got a doctor who said, take her off the medicine. I have serious health problems. I have a daughter that's at IU. I have one graduating this year who's a straight A student at Wrights. And I do sit on the school improvement board. And anytime the principal come to me and she's looking at the grades fluctuate my kids, I don't play with my children. I've been laboring for 18 years as a single parent. Their dad's a retired veteran. I had to get a federal judge to go in to get money. I have serious issues going on and I need help. That paper you gave me about veterans, I've done all that. I filed a federal congressional. I've been to the Legion. I took my membership away from there. I've been downtown with Mr. Ball. He's filed paperwork. For some reason, it just kept getting shifted. I know why, because it was a domestic violence case. If I'd have killed my husband, I'd be trying to explain why I killed him when he hit me. I don't play those games. I need some help. I need some serious help here. I'm still in the shelter. I'm not getting help. I've tried to get help for getting rent monies to get moved in. I need some help.
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Rico.
Can we talk afterward that I can get some specifics? I don't know if I've been aware of the issues that, particularly that you were dealing with. I don't think we talked about it, but I'd be happy to really look into it more. Maybe afterward I can get your name and your contact information. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next is Senator Dyke.
Yeah, I think we talked at another meeting once before, but at that time I think you're working through the federal government to try to get some things resolved, and the way it sounds like everything's been kind of shuffled, but all of us would be glad to help any way we can. I mean, we work very closely with the federal, with Senator Lugar, Senator Bayh, and Representative Ellsworth's offices, and feel free to contact us and we'll try to work together to do that.
Representative Avery.
Just to say, if your problem is federal, you should work with Congressman Ellsworth's office, because they do a wonderful job of constituent services. Yeah, but if your problem is with the state government, well, okay, it's federal. Well, everybody's having a problem with state government and the FSSA right now, but if it's federal, why to work with Congressman Ellsworth's office? They do a wonderful job, and they got a great staff.
Okay, thank you. We are back on this side of the room. I see, whoop, maybe not. Well, yes, yes, sir. Please step up to the microphone.
Maybe I'm listening a little bit too soon. My name's Elder Mossberg, but I'm really more concerned about consolidation.
Okay. Well, if we have some time, we might have to consolidate the consolidation discussion.
We talked about schools. We've seen what the school board done in the last 2 years. We voted for more money, which Bob's having problems with. We come along here, and I'd like to see some teeth put in this thing so that after we pass things, that they can't turn around and hit us in the back with closing schools, which we just got done spending a bunch of money on at North High School. I think, and I suggested it in a hearing after the last consolidation meeting, to have a 10-year cap put in there where they cannot change things after the consolidation is passed, if it does go past. Because I don't think that's right to change like they did with Norris High School, spend all this money out there, closing it, and I've been wondering how we're paying for the Civic Center across the way when where consolidation is really going to help us in the county. We got farmers out there that's got cattle. We got city people that's got horses, and the city has got ordinance with no cattle in it. Where are we heading?
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators.
Okay.
Senator
Can I
Dyke.
say something?
Well, yes, we do have Senator Dyke being able to speak. I mean, that's kind of a segue into the consolidation
Okay.
discussion, but we'll start to be fair and allow responses.
Very quickly, you are correct that all the local decisions on the school funding and the building expansions were made before the state law was changed. You're exactly right. And that's why I see a lot of times the state government, before you give it a chance for anything to work, you're changing something again. So that's a problem. You're definitely right. I don't see how we can get around that, what you said to do, though. I'll give it 10 years' time, whatever. But it has taken local control out. So what the decisions were made, and it was a voters' referendum, all of a sudden now the state says, wait a minute, we're going to cut funding. And all of a sudden they're going to scramble to see what they're going to do. So that is a problem. If I can briefly say something very quickly about taxes for farmland, since you stood up and talked, can I do that? We changed some legislation this year. It gives a rolling 6-year average of farmland assessments, and it's taken off the top year, the highest year. So it should help on farmland assessments in the future, because what's happened this next year, farmland over a 5-year period would have doubled. Assessments of farmland would have doubled. So this ought to be able to help farmland assessments in the future. So I just want to tell you that. I don't know if you knew that happened. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, we are running very short on time to get into any kind of discussion about consolidation at all. Are there any other responses to this particular speaker? Are there any other issues to come up? I don't see any. Yes, sir. You have one issue. Please come to the microphone. Looks like we might be saving consolidation for another day. Sure you can.
Good morning. My name is David Griffith, and I came last year to request that we get a sign on 41 that says Chicago is 279 miles. And Dennis Avery and the Vanderburgh County delegation has responded and requested that sign with NDOT. And driving through Gibson County on North 41, the sign does say the mileage to Chicago, which is really good for this area, for travelers, to be informed. However, we probably still have the mindset here in Evansville that driving to Mount Vernon, Illinois, I-64 west to I-57 north is the best way to go to Chicago. And they're adding like 85 miles to the trip. And they may not even see where the sign is placed now. So if we could get maybe one more sign south of I-64, preferably in Evansville, Vanderburgh County, I think it would be a selling point for Evansville. Wondered if that was possible.
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Avery.
As you know, I've written, I wrote letters 2 years ago when you came here, and then again last year when you came to meet your legislators dealing with the signage issue. And I was happy they finally got the sign up. It's taken them a while, but there is a sign that tells you how to go to Chicago. But you would like to see one located south of 64 in Vanderburgh County as opposed to the one that's currently located north of 64. That is correct. It's probably a good idea because it does help people in Evansville, but it would have to be closer to Evansville. You don't want them too close together, but it's a good point. And I will lobby my senator about that, but at the same time, I'm still alive, and I have until November, and I'll write another letter and asking that signage that there be signage in southern part of the of 41 also, directing people to the. I think it was take advantage of people coming off of 64, but at least they told me they would put it in an appropriate place. But I'm glad they did it, and I was happy about that. But thank you for being here, and thank you for your annual presentation.
Thank you.
Senator Dyke.
Thank you. Thank you, David. You know, after you met with us, it was last year, is that correct? Yes. When it was? And we all wrote letters and talked to NDOT about it. I got a response back saying there's no way they'd put that sign up. And, they changed their mind on it, but they never let me know they were going to change their mind. They just went ahead and did it. But it's pretty amazing that they told me they weren't going to do it. So, but thanks for your input on that.
Okay, thank you. We are running probably pretty short on time. What I wind up wanting to do is to thank our legislators for being here. We will spend a couple minutes, though, to let you know a couple things and about consolidation. And the first thing is, as you leave today, please be sure to take your coffee cups and put them over here on the table and police the area around yourself. That's actually a military term for picking up after yourself, and put the stuff over here. There's still an opportunity to make a donation if you'd like to do that. If your name's on the list when we start to meet the legislators for the next season, we will send you a heads up about that. And but it should be in the media, so we appreciate all that. And there is no Meet Your Legislators scheduled anymore for this season, so the next one will be for the long session that begins for the 2011 session. But it'll be late, right after Orientation Day, or Organization Day rather, is when we'll try to have the very first one of the season. I'd like to thank the sponsors for their assistance, but especially would like to thank all the legislators. And again, I'd like to have a special thanks to Dennis Avery. And I might want to note that on this particular thing right here, hand me that, as what you'll be able to do, I'd like to present you with this. You'll be able to keep that, and I appreciate your service, and you can keep that as a memento. Again, we only have a couple minutes left. There is another group that is using the room. But I want to give a few minutes, about 5 minutes, to Roberta Hyman with the League of Women Voters. In fact, this is unrehearsed, so but she's always prepared to give you a little bit of an indication, if you're interested in the issue of consolidation, how you can be involved in that issue, what's already happened a little bit, and a little bit about what the process is. We just got maybe just a few minutes to do that, if you don't mind.
Well, basically, you can be involved by attending all of the meetings. We have with us today a member of the study committee that will prepare the consolidation plan, John Bittner. You stand, John? Yeah. He's one of the rural representatives on the committee. All of its meetings will be open to the public. They're going in with open ears, I think I can say that. They want to hear from people. They are forming study subcommittees for various issues and looking for people to serve on those if you're interested. Some will deal with the public safety, the real sticky issue of how to or whether to combine the city police and county sheriffs. That's always a tough issue in any consolidation. Others will deal with parks and recreation, some with finances. So just how you can be involved, it's going to be easy to be involved in this. It's going to be easy to be heard because all their meetings will be open to the public. You've said twice a month? Yeah. Every 2 weeks they're going to be meeting at the Civic Center. Yeah, and subcommittees in between. So there's a lot of work they're going to be doing and lots of opportunity. One of the things that there's no pat consolidation plan that you can apply to every community across the country, and what we have here is an opportunity to come up with one that really fits this community. The difference between the 3 previous consolidation proposals that we've considered here and this time is that this time change is coming whether we want it or not. The legislature, you've heard them talk about it, and already they did away with township assessors and went to that. So change is coming whether we want it or not. This time with the study committee, we've got a chance to reinvent our local government that fits Evansville and Vanderburgh County rather than have these pat changes imposed by the legislature, because Evansville's not like Gary. It's not like Fort Wayne. It's Evansville and Vanderburgh County. So we've got that change. One of the issues that came up today was, why can't we use this pot of money for that thing and whatever? You say it's because that's the way the legislature wrote the law. And the most consolidated, the very most consolidated governments in this country are Nashville and Davidson County, Tennessee. They have a 40-member Metro Council, 40-member compared to our, 7 members or 9-member city council, 40 members. And that council controls every budget, the school budget, the levy budget, every budget goes before this one council. And then that forces them to set priorities of all the money generated through all kinds of taxes in this community. How much do we want to spend on schools? How much do we want to spend on convention centers? It's a single budget controlled by this. So that's real consolidation as compared to probably Indianapolis and Marion County is one of the least consolidated. They've still got multiple fire departments, multiple police departments. We're consolidated more than probably Marion County.
Yes.
We've got a lot of city-county departments that are consolidated. What they have and what we don't have is the key thing, a consolidated council and consolidated executive and legislative bodies. And the argument is that creates a structure for leadership that we don't have here. We've got 3 chief executives of the county government and 1 chief executive of city government. They don't often talk even, much less have a common vision to work towards. So there's in many directions this committee can go in. It is charged by state law to prepare a consolidation plan and present it to the voters to either approve or reject. That's their charge under state law, and the fun has just begun.
I might want to ask a couple of questions. John had mentioned that the meetings are twice monthly. Are those regularly scheduled like the first and third Wednesdays, or is that how the scheduling of those meetings is? Or is there such a thing?
They're on the commissioner's website. There's one coming up the 30th, which would have been the following week, so they do get altered because of Easter and so forth.
Okay, so the next meeting is March the 30th?
Yes.
Okay.
At 5:30?
That was the next question, at 5:30, and it's in, you said the Civic Center? In the council chambers, the city council chambers? That's room 301, is city council chambers. So in case anybody wants to attend, the next meeting of that is 5:30 on March 30th in room 301 of the Civic Center. Okay. I have another quick question. In fact, it's going to be the last one, the first and the last one. And I thought about that this morning, and I might want some comments on it. And that is, right now, if we have like a city government and a county government, each one has a separate like bonding structure and a way to raise money like federal funds. If we eliminate one of those and just have a consolidated government, we have then just one bonding ability, I think. Would that then affect the ability of a consolidated city-county government in its bonding capacity or its ability to raise funds? Is that a factor, or has that been talked about yet? I mean, will we lose the ability to raise bond funds if happens? That's my question. Has there been discussion about that so far? Or should I just show up on the 30th?
That is a subcommittee with Ed Hafer is in charge of that.
Okay.
I believe that meeting is before this 5:30 meeting.
But it's still March the 30th?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's before 30 though. We've got a lady here with us. Department of Legislature. Do you have an answer to that?
I think it would.
I'm sorry?
I think it would affect it, but the consolidation statute is so broad. I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't write that into it.
I'm sure
Okay.
that Indianapolis and Marion County still have bonding capacity.
Well,
You know,
I wasn't saying that you lose
it
bonding.
consolidated.
But do you lose some capacity? I know you still have the ability to bond, but will you lose the amount of money that you can go after? Okay, okay. Representative Avery.
Just, Roberta mentioned that they only have the one legislative body, but they still have a legislative body and executive body in Speedway, in Lawrence, and one other city.
That's what I said. We're probably more consolidated.
And they
than,
still have 11 school corporations to our one, but they also have 20 some odd charter schools to our, I think, two. And they have,
Indianapolis is not a typical consolidated
I would not
government
want to
at
try
all.
to make it anything close to Indianapolis because
No.
it's we could stop right now and be
Indianapolis is
better
the
than
only
them.
consolidated government in the whole country that was imposed by the state legislature rather than by local referendum vote.
And I think the one thing that we have an opportunity to do is to organize government the way it should be organized, and I think we ought to take advantage of that opportunity. But at the same time, not just organize for the sake of organization. Of putting together a plan for political purposes. I think too often plans have been attempted to be imposed upon us by special interest groups in Evansville, like the Chamber of Commerce. But I think we ought to take advantage of this opportunity to do a good job, and we have that chance with some good people that will be working on that issue for some time now.
We're going to fudge just a little bit on the time allotted to us because I saw Marcia Al, who's director of the library. She's not here right now, so what's she going to do to us? You know? John, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a comment Roberta made that the vote for cities over 900,000 to consolidate, that was by the state legislature. You say it was imposed by the state legislature. As a result of that, Judge Dillon, right over here at Woodville K. Denton, building over here, ruled that it was an effort not to consolidate schools, and therefore the entire state that voted for that would pay for that busing. But I have a friend on the school board who works for Eli Lilly, and he said, "Oh, John, you don't understand." And I said, "What do you mean? They pay for the busing?" He said, "No, the judge ruled that any repairs or buildings that you need will also be included to achieve that." And he said that was bananas. So the entire state owed that in Indianapolis. We're also picking up, what, $24 million for the next 30 years we're going to pour into Indianapolis from the rest of the state just to keep their sports complex going up there.
And I don't know what any of that has to do with whether we should consolidate government in Vandenberg and Evansville. I mean, what happens in Indianapolis is, we don't have any control over it. What we do have is an opportunity to organize a local government as it should be. It's like if we were all transported to the moon and had to create a government for ourselves there. Let's start over and make it right. I think that there are things that exist in our local government now that we wouldn't want to carry forth.
Okay. So it sounds like you're saying what happens in Indianapolis should stay in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I mention that only because I think consolidation is very complicated. It affects labor, it affects African American vote, your right to farm, block grants. My goodness.
It is. It's not simple.
And we're on, I would say the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor and part of the county commission are fast forward. They want to keep the minimum on this. Some say by June hell with this, you have the best mayor money can buy, and your councils, you might have, 3 a year elected, and if you can fund their races. I think two people of equal quality running for a race, and the one that has the bucks, it seems like they float to the top. So that's my concern. I hope I have an open mind, and you and I have had dialogue on this forever.
Yeah.
I congratulate you on getting the momentum behind the League of Women's. I know that the chamber approached you to carry this, and you were careful not to meet in the chamber's office, and that's nice. And you even got a person from Warren County to help with the petition, so I think you've done a tremendous job in getting.
Who was that?
Okay.
Well, I know a lot of people in Warwick County would like to run Evansville. They keep writing letters to the editor about what we should do here,
Okay.
you know?
We got time for maybe a couple more comments. I see one right here, John.
Yeah, I wanted to weigh in with the fact that when I read through the list of the people who are preparing this plan, it was probably the most impressive list of people who have the public interest in mind that I've seen put together. I appreciate that a lot.
Okay. Other quick comments? We are running out of time, and I don't see any. So again, thank you all for being here, and we will see you the next time.